Every day, ordinary people make extraordinary choices as they negotiate unpredictable pathways to the peak of their expectations without ever taking the time to enjoy the view. Join me, Tish Tindall, at this panoramic viewpoint of astonishing personal and professional progress as we find out why my next guest is living the fabulous life. Well, hello and welcome, Ashley Ford. How are you this evening?
I'm excellent. I'm so happy to be here.
And it's not evening where you are, is it, darling?
No, it's mid-afternoon. It's 3 o'clock.
And you're somewhere just beautiful. Tell us where it is.
I'm in Bridgehampton, Long Island, New York at the moment.
Oh, wow.
My fiance and I, came to escape the pandemic and to stay with his mom for a while, which we turned into I think we've been here for over a month and we're staying till we don't know when we're going back.
And a beautiful
LA.
Oh, to LA.
Yeah.
And so which, they're so very different, aren't they, these cities? But, which one do you prefer? Or is that a silly question?
Everyone asks me that. And I feel like it's like that question of do you like cats or dogs? And I was like, I like both. And, and I do feel like LA and New York people kind of get at each other like cats and dogs too.
Oh, do they?
When I moved to New York, people were like, oh, well, people in LA, you can't trust them. And then I moved to LA and they're like, you're from New York, well, you can't trust New Yorkers. I was like, okay, we're all fabulous. And
absolutely.
I fell in love with New York a long time ago. I literally thought I would never leave. And then LA called and I'm so glad I went. I think I started out in Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. That's, for people who don't know, that's northern BC, west coast of Canada. It's not a small town, but it's not, a metropolitan place, and then I went to Vancouver, and each time I've moved, I have found it has released a sort of growth spurt, new experiences. Definitely.
And how long have you been doing? And I want to say what you've been doing because reading your career, to date, it's incredible. You're producing, you're directing, you're writing, you're acting. You were in cabaret, so you were singing, you were on Broadway. Come on now. What else are you doing apart from creating virtual fringe shows? And that's how we met. I mean, what are you? Are you a performer, an artist, a creator? Are you just a powerhouse? Come on, Ashley. What are you doing? What would you call yourself?
I definitely am an actor first. That was always, I thought that was always my calling. Certainly I loved to sing. I did write when I was younger, mostly poetry, which I used to get my experimental theater company in New York to do weird movement poems, movement dances to,
Yeah.
But so definitely, and I always did want to be an artist. My mom had this book growing up. It was called your school day treasures, and each year you had to fill these things out, and you had all these check boxes of what do you want to be when you grow up. And I would check off all these things like doctor, nurse, fireman, and the one that always stood out to me was artist, though, because I remember asking my mom, what is that? And then when she described what an artist was, I was like, that's a job? I was from 4 years old, I was like, that sounds good. So.
And so do you think that was your reason for starting out then as an artist, as an actor? Do you think that was your reason?
I think it's just what I was. I think all humans are innately artistic beings. I think some of us just feel driven
Yeah.
And I think even from my youth, I was storytelling. I was making up plays and adventures and fantastical journeys, I didn't even need people. It could be by myself or with my friends or dolls, whatever, in my backyard. And, and then, I was actually really shy, but when I got into school, I was always, as shy as I was, anytime there was an opportunity to perform, it wasn't so much the performing, but I wanted to read the poem out loud. And, when you join drama club, in high school, I was fascinated by, I remember we had this one script, and when I read it, someone said later it was maybe a little bit like challenging for like high school students to do, because it was called this, I can't even remember, but it didn't even make any sense. It was so weird. It made
Yeah.
no sense. And then slowly our director helped us create, and it felt like we were creating something out of nothing, and that this story emerged that I didn't even fully understand in all these different
Yeah.
layers. you know?
And so
um,
the penny began to drop about how, how you start to create something. Is that kind of it?
yes. So I've always been fascinated by that, and I think the honesty of
Yeah.
of well, whether it's a film or a play, always like looking behind our humanity. I think I've someone grew up with like a
Absolutely.
huge inner life, and yeah, the world is
And to
like
have
not enough.
this and to have this reveal when you create things. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and
And
you
but
know,
that every ordinary person has a story, behind their their hidden behind their, I don't want to say
of
vacant
course, no, no,
expression,
yes,
but
well,
we're all
sometimes.
hiding like amazing stories.
And the thing that I find fascinating about you is that you have created theatrical companies, along the way to explore your ideas and your works, and that's exhausting. Where does your stamina come from?
I don't know. I think it comes from the creative process. I didn't set out, even though I understand now where the seeds came from, I didn't set out to create my own theater. It just sort of happened. People would be like, I am starting a theater company. You should help. And that I found out I was really good at helping.
Yeah.
um, Sorry, what? Yeah, you might have to rephrase. I got off
No,
track.
so my no, no, it's brilliant. So
Do
I just wonder where the stamina comes from, because
oh, that's
I know how much you're doing, and to keep creating and helping and um doing everything that you're doing, it takes a lot of stamina. And I just wonder, where does that come from for you?
I think it certainly comes from, well, passion, but the
Yeah,
passion is rooted in a joy of
yeah,
loving what I do. But I think again it comes from the artistic process. So when someone
yeah,
asks me to start on a project, or I start one myself, then we start collaborating, and then it just, the pandemic was a great example of that. At the start of this pandemic, I had no stamina. I didn't want to get out of bed and create. I did in my like deep down, but like the energy that it was
yeah,
available to do that. And never mind, before the year before that, I had a car accident and I'm like recovering, like, oh my gosh, finding the energy and the to start. And people will always tell you that starting is the hardest part.
of
So
course, yeah,
that's it. So once it's that first leap, it's that first step. And you got to just take that first step, whether it's meeting with your friend to read 10 minutes of her script that she scribbled madly on her computer because you told her you had a meeting at 3 o'clock and that you expected to read something new that she had written.
yes,
and that's all it is. You kind of have to like force yourselves to get there, but then you start and then you do it again. and then more and more ideas start generating, and then you kind of get on the wave and you ride it. Woo.
And it was interesting. It broke up slightly there, but when you said about the first step, taking the first step, getting on that first step and having the energy to do that, what has inspired you to do that so many times now in your career?
Oh, I mean, I don't want to say the results, because I mean, the first time you don't know what the results, you don't really know what the results are going to be any time.
No.
But certainly, the first time you do it, especially like the first time you get through the first big show I did as an actor, but the first show that I helped, create and direct. I mean, there's a part in the middle that's just, it is kind of exhausting. And the first time I produced a play, I was like, well, this is kind of masochistic, isn't it? Because in the middle of it, I was not enjoying it. I was actually like,
No.
it was challenging me in really difficult ways. But then when I was able to see the final outcome, you have that moment of like, aha, that moment of, oh, and also seeing other people's reactions to it. And so I think we sort of slowly through life, we hope, you don't always get that. So you can't rely on it, but hopefully you have moments of that, and you got to keep those in sight, that that you're working towards something.
Yeah. And that's
bigger.
that's the resilience, isn't it? It's learning that even in those times when things aren't perhaps viewed as a success, that the process is so important, and what we learn from the process is incredible. If you were to sort of just look back just ever so slightly and just reflect on how you got here, and and think about the things that kept you going, what would be there? What would you see? What kept you going when things were maybe difficult?
Oh my gosh. I think I I mean, certainly I think it helps I've had certain people in my life who've believed in
Yeah,
me. I know not everyone always has that, but there is someone.
of
um,
course.
and sometimes it's hard to navigate who those people are, because sometimes even the people closest to you, or you think are close to you, what you do scares them, so so
That's the
they'll
truth.
deter you. Well, don't you think you should do something else? Have
Yes.
you thought about?
Yeah.
um, but there, my family has always been very supportive, and I've had certain friends, and I've just lucked out. There was like moments when I've just been super low, and like when I was in Vancouver, and I had a good agent, and I was going out, and I maybe booked like a couple things, but I didn't think in my mind that I was doing well. And then out of the blue, this girl, another actress, calls me, who was at the same agency as me. She's at the same agency. And she literally was in a bar and overheard a conversation about my agent bragging about me to someone else. And I was thinking, my agent's going to drop me because I need to book, and I haven't booked anything bigger. And she called, and like, that was just like a godsend. That was like,
That's
we're the,
amazing.
yeah. And I've
And
had
what
like
what were the
little,
chances? What were the
yeah,
chances of that
yeah.
happening? That's
And
incredible.
I can't emphasize how like, I was like, I am doing well, but we can't always see it, like she's, yeah. So, and I've had a few other little experiences like that.
And do you find that things like that come out of the blue? Because that I find that really exciting. That when you're
Yeah.
looking for things all the time, it maybe doesn't arrive, but then you take your foot off the pedal just as slightly, and boom.
Well, yeah, I mean, it does come out of the blue, though I have to say it involves having someone take the other in your life, take the initiative and come to you, and how they, and that's, such a precious gift, anytime we can do that for, I mean, I'm not just speaking to the artists out there. If there's like non-artists listening to this,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's so
And
important.
do you think that there is I think it's really important to be kind, and to remember that being kind is one of the most important things in life, as well as it is in the creative industries. You know, do you find that you come across a lot of kind people? In your experience, do you find that kindness is still out there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And one thing I've learned is that you have to be kind to yourself, and how people treat others is often a reflection of how they treat themselves too. Um, and so, um, so sometimes
I mean,
I
that's
keep
an
in mind
interesting
that. I
point.
mean, you do meet people in the biz, of course, who are, you think are harsh, or maybe you don't agree with their way they approach things. But you kind of think, well, they're probably putting the expectation on me that they put on themselves.
Yeah.
And that at
And
least I can come from a place of understanding when that happens. But yeah, I've always tried practicing that towards myself first, so that I can do it for others. And I find there is a lot. I feel like when I meet people who are really successful, and when I like they're I'm always surprised by their generosity. But I think that we shouldn't be surprised. I think they're if you're in the world of creating, whether it's on stage or behind the camera, there is a certain generosity that's required as part of the collaborative creative process.
the process.
Mm-hmm.
But as a performer, your work is it's beautiful. It's you know uh, you remind me so much of Meryl Streep. It's unbelievable, and you are so believable. Do you know that? Do you know that you are good at your craft?
Oh, I mean, yes. um, I think it's just,
Good.
certainly I have doubts, and I'm always, I forget who was there said this. Maybe it was like Anne Bogart, but there's something called like divine sense of dissatisfaction. Like, if you're constantly striving for perfection, that's probably a habit you should kick in this business. But
Yeah, yeah.
so it's not like yeah, I think it's this constant, it's a weird balance that you have to strike of, saying to yourself and knowing to yourself, like, yes, I am enough. Yes, I'm good at what I do. But at the same time, there's you're also just working apart this other part of you that's like picking things apart. And you're like, well, how can we make this better though? Yeah. And you gotta like
But
kind of
that
let those
that
two
that
down.
comes that comes I mean, it's your response to that was lovely, I have to say. Your response to that question was just lovely, and I have to say it again. I was absolutely blown away by your work, and I know that I'm going to continue to do so. And when you kind of step back and you listen to somebody else who is saying this to you. I mean, I'm in Lossiemouth in the north of Scotland, and you're in New York. Isn't it wonderful that we can have these discussions? And I think these
Yeah.
discussions will also always influence those people who are going into the industry. And if you don't mind, I've got a couple of questions from
Yeah. Yeah.
two of our performing arts students at Lossie Entertainment Academy. The first one is from Bryony, who has studied both dance and musical theatre. And she would like to know, were there any challenges that you had to face through your acting career that you never expected to have? And how did you overcome them? Good question. Good question.
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's been constant challenges. Yeah. Uh, oh gosh. Um, I think.
One that really interests me is the virtual fringe performances.
Oh,
Were there many
oh,
were there
interesting.
many challenges putting that together?
Oh, I mean, there's a million mini challenges that came along with that. I found that the challenge was just the technical aspect of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And even, I mean, we did two different shows, but like the Dreaming of Sexual Healing, sort of, especially, and also like performing in it and having to like step back and put my producer away, which is hard when you're like in between takes, people are asking you questions about things.
Yeah.
um Certainly. Yeah, I mean, it was like there were sound issues, there were people had different internet speeds.
Yeah.
Sound was a huge one. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And where do you find the resilience to overcome these things? Is it sheer determination? Do you just know that you've got to get to the end of this process, or what makes you get through to that part?
Again, you have to, I mean, I've had to develop a sense of trust in the process,
Sure.
and also just taking things moment by moment. You
Live in the
know,
here and now, that's for
well, it
sure. Yeah.
really is. I mean, that is
Yeah.
the answer to most things acting related. It's just like come back to
Yeah.
be in the present,
Yes.
um,
Absolutely.
and that
Which is
means
which is
trusting
an
it.
art in itself, isn't it?
Yeah. Though,
And
I was going to say, I
go on.
mean, those challenges aren't big challenges. Like they just come along and you deal with them. I mean, I got a little shy, but one of the biggest challenges that sort of came my way early on was my first year. I hate admitting this, but my first year of auditioning for theater schools, I got rejected by like all of them. I think I got on one wait list and they never called.
Their loss. Their loss.
and and certainly, that seems so monumental in my mind, which now as a working actor, it's like you get rejected every day. It's like bring on the
Yeah.
next rejection. New York's
Yes.
great for training that out of you too. Just like in daily living. uh, but yeah, and I was so shy, I was terrified, and I worked on my monologues, but there was other aspects to auditioning for a theater school. They wanted you to talk about yourself, and I didn't want to or know how to do that. And then I remember there was like there would always be, in Canada at least, there's always a group ensemble aspect of the, either it's not the callback or in the initial audition. And I just remember being like, there was an improv and you had to get up in the middle, and I had never done improv. And I remember like having this conversation in my head being like, Ashley, you need to get up or else you're going to be cut. And
Yes.
I couldn't get up. It was just like, improvisation was terrifying for me. And then that was like a deciding factor on like what I thought was going to be a deciding factor on my entire future. It was
Well,
insane.
that's fantastic, and I know certainly our students and a lot of students out there will be wondering how you overcame that. Have you overcome that? Is that something that has got better for you?
Oh yeah. I mean, considering how terrible I was at auditioning, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I I mean, one thing was like, a lot of people after that were like, well, you didn't get in, so what are you going to do instead? And I think I sort of shocked people being like, well, I'm going to audition next year. But I knew that I had to work on myself. Certainly I went to Stella Adler eventually. I mean,
Yes.
I studied in Canada at Douglas College, and then many years later I continued my education at the Stella Adler Student in New York. But one of the things
Wonderful.
that took me there was part of their artistic statement is that growth as an actor is synonymous with growth as a human being. And I mean, they didn't make that up. It's just an observation,
Yes.
and I was like, oh, I feel like I know that because, I mean, I really just started working on myself. I had stopped, like I said, I used to write when I was younger, but I had stopped. So I
Yeah.
started writing every day. I started reading more again because I was a bookworm as a child, but then I
Yeah.
stopped, and so I found because right before I had auditioned for school, I had taken the year and I was working. I was just working at a restaurant and, trying to do plays on the side. But, I was confronted with the real world, and it kind of like it, you have to feed your spirit as much as you feed your pocketbook.
Yes. Yes.
And that has been a continuing,
That's
dance
great
that
advice.
I've learned. Yeah, you have to, no matter how hard it is, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling, it doesn't even have to be going on an audition. It's like, go to the opera, not because it's going to be good for your career, but because you love I don't actually like the opera, but someone might out there.
Lots of
Nothing
people do.
against it. I
Lots
just
of people do.
haven't really been much. I was like, if for some you it might mean going clubbing. I don't know. It's like
I,
dance.
yeah, no, I know what you mean, and I think
Yeah.
it's really important to do things to immerse yourself in the arts and and art forms. And
Mm-hmm.
I have another question from somebody who you're probably inspiring very much right now. Jack is a HND music student, but he's also an actor. He writes, he's unpublished at the moment, but I'm sure he will be published. He writes and he performs, sings, does it all really. And his question is, when was the moment that you realized that acting was the perfect path for you? That's another brilliant question.
Oh, well, again, I think there's been multiple experiences. I
Yeah.
think, like I said, I was always creatively involved, even as a young child. But singing, mainly it used to be singing and music and writing that I started
Yeah.
with. And I think I did have this idea in my head about it being a singer-songwriter.
Yes.
But I had no really tried writing something, and I don't know, it was the business side. I was like, how do you do that? But I
Yeah.
had this moment of the first time. I mean, I'd been in drama club, we'd rehearsed a play, but then we like traveled to this festival, and this I just had this first moment of the rehearsal going away and just stepping on a stage and just having a conversation with this empty void that was the audience. And it was just different, and I felt different afterwards. And I think everyone's had some sort of experience like that along the way. But I think that, I don't know if I was right then, like, oh, I'm going to be a professional actress, but definitely that was an aha moment. And then I think that year I auditioned for the local theater, it was the Prince George Playhouse, and I got in to the chorus. And then, the lead dropped out, and the next thing I was, you know, playing Molly in the Unsinkable Molly Brown. And that was another aha moment. I was like, oh, people do this.
Yeah.
This is like a real thing.
Yes.
And I was just like, it was like first love. It was just like, I
Yeah.
was like goner. I was like, oh, yeah. And there's
And
been other moments.
it's so lovely to see you reflect like that, because it my next question was going to be, if you were to just take a moment to enjoy the view, and maybe see what we all see when we're listening to you, and how inspiring you are, Ashley. I mean, this is like a masterclass, and I know there are going to be many people who have watched this that will be waiting to experience that, these aha moments that you've had, but also, who will maybe now go forward and work on themselves as well as working on their craft, because clearly what you're saying, and what I believe very much, is it goes hand in hand. But if you were to pause and just reflect on how wonderful this process has been for you to get to this point today, to us having this conversation, what would be fabulous? I mean, in my opinion, the answer would be you. But what would be fabulous if you were looking back now?
Um, I mean, it's all been fabulous.
That's
It's I mean, there's been so much. I was thinking as you were talking, I don't know why, I thought of Anne Bogart has this book, I think it's called, and it's just like this image of a girl standing on above a pool on a like a diving
A
board
diving
about
board, yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it's called, and the title of the book is called And Then You
Yes, I
Act.
know. Yes, I know the book.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like that moment before the leap. FYI, in real life, like I do not like diving. I will not dive off a board of any.
I do not
I
dive.
did it. They
I'm
made
not
me do it
diving.
once when I was. They made me do it once when I was in like grade school, and I was like, I'm good, never again.
So an
But
opera about
artistically,
diving wouldn't work.
no, not like physically, but artistically speaking, or just in life, you know, those psychological leaps that we've taken.
Sure.
Oh, I've never regretted any one, and it's always, you know, oh my gosh, moving to a new city, you know, going on that first audition, and then the next one after you don't hear back from anyone.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just led me to some wonderful moments.
And so, what do you think makes you do what you do?
I don't know, and I don't care.
Wow. I wish we had scripted that, because that would have been the best script we'd ever written. That is such a wonderful answer. And Ashley, I have to say to you, listening to you, sometimes I forgot I was meant to be asking the questions. I'm listening to you. You're so informed, you are so knowledgeable, and you're so humble. And I cannot wait to be at the Oscar party, and chat with you about your awards, because for anybody who has watched you perform, I'm sure the comparison will be talked about an awful lot. And as I said before, you just remind me of Meryl Streep, and I'm absolutely honoured to have had a chance to speak to you at this point in your career, because I'm sure you'll be too busy maybe for me in a few years' time.
Oh, I don't think so. It's so wonderful speaking with you. I'm so glad that we met.
Yeah, me too. And I'm really glad that we met because of the virtual Fringe experience. That's
Yeah.
marvelous.
Hey, there's another leap. Who knew?
And exactly, another leap. And it's really interesting, because I think this podcast is really about giving people the chance to just peek into the insights of people who are working in the industry and who are working so hard still to believe in themselves. And I really urge anybody to go online and search out your work, because it will be a very powerful moment for you. And so, Ashley Ford, I just want to say thank you so much. You are truly fabulous, my darling, and I have absolutely enjoyed every moment of this. Thank you so
Well,
much for taking the time.
thank you, Tish, and as are you. Such a pleasure.
Thank you, darling. And do you know what we're going to do to finish today is we
Yeah.
have a documentary coming out shortly about a bizarre experience that I had writing the new development of a musical that was originally conceived by David Guest and Michael Jackson about Robert Burns. And the documentary follows what we've done and the ups and the downs. And so what we're about to see now is the trailer. So I hope you enjoy it. And please stay in touch. And thank you again for this incredible masterclass. Ashley Ford, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm like you. I don't know. Why are we still doing this musical?
look, Diane, I'm 50. No, nobody's going to come up to me today and say, here's, I don't know, what amount of money would make you happy? I don't know, here's £3.50 to take it to Broadway. I don't know. But I'm not, these people have given up 5 years of their life. From the heart of every nation, I am Robert Burns. I'm not Robert Burns, but I can tell you the story.
Why is it so good? You've not answered my question.
It's because it.
Why does it get to people?
Because it shoots from the hip straight to the heart.
The hip to the heart.